Definitely been fun to seeing you guys progress and have a good time with it. So with that, hopefully everybody's excited for this weekend. You don't need to be anxious. It's just another long run and you're ready to go. So I'll kick it off to Mario and then we can ask him all the fun questions that we may have.
Cool. Yeah, I think that's probably going to be the most productive part of the discussion. I'll go over some high level things as far as logistics, course, all of that. And then I know many of you have specific questions, and then as soon as I'm done, we can open it up for that. I don't know how many of you have run CIM before, but I think for many of you, it is your first time. It's a great race. It is, smaller to mid-level marathon, but it kind of has that big race feel to it, which I really love. I call CIM a business marathon. Most people don't go there because the course from Folsom to Sacramento is very scenic. Most folks are there to try and perform and run a fast time, which is one of the unique elements of that race. From the front all the way to the back, you can really feel that, and it's a special thing to be a part of. It's where my PR is from 2018, and many others as well. I think CIM, it is known as a fast course, and with good reason. And it's not because, even though it's a net downhill course, it's not because you're running downhill the entire time. I mean, I think the course is favorable. The fact that it's point to point, the weather's usually pretty good. There's more down than there is up. But I think a big reason people run fast there is because most people are there to run fast. And folks are pulling each other along the entire way, and that is, it's hard to quantify, but I think that makes a bigger difference in the actual course itself. The course itself, like I said, it's net downhill. It's 366 feet of loss over the course of 26.2 miles, but it's not like falling off a cliff fast. It's not one of these like revel races where you start at the top of a mountain and you finish down at sea level. I think a lot of people, especially first time CIMers, are surprised at how rolling of a course it really is, and that can catch a lot of people by surprise. They think, oh, I'm just going to be running downhill the entire time. No, 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 that you run uphill some part of the way for the first like 21 miles. It's really only the last 5 miles that are pretty dead flat when you get into Sacramento, and you're just counting off the blocks at that point. You're not really getting any help from the course, but it's not pushing against you either. But early on, there's a lot of, we'll just say, activity, undulating activity, the first like 21 miles of the race. And basically what I tell people is like, whatever that course throws at you for an uphill, you're going to get that and then some on the descent. So I think it's just a matter of, staying steady and just kind of managing your effort appropriately. A lot of people blow their race at CIM in the first 10K. That's where some of the bigger downhills are. It's really easy to get greedy and beat your legs up. So you have to just be super, super patient and disciplined, even if it feels really, really easy. I mean, I tell people like, at that point, you're just putting money in the bank, and you can cash that out later. But if you start cashing it out early on, you're not going to come back from it at the end. As I said, the course doesn't really help you as much. I mean, these are not big climbs. It's all very gentle grades, kind of annoying more than anything else. And I think you just can't fight, you can't fight the course on that. And then on the descents, you have to use it, but you can't really abuse it either. And the course just does that for about 21 miles. You kind of roll up and then you go down, and then you roll up a little bit and you go down. Um, and if you hit it right, you can really just go for a good ride and run a fast time. And the start too, it's like, any other start, it's pretty crowded. Everyone's excited. It's hot. You just really have to be super disciplined and try not to waste too much energy. I think in the first 6 miles of the race, especially the first 2 to 3, there's a tendency to want to like weave through people and kind of get your position. Just like hold your line. You're going to be fine. You want to try to run as evenly as possible and just maintain a steady effort the entire way. I tell people, whether it's CIM or any other marathon, like try to be bored early on. You have all that excitement around you. But I think if you can really just lock into the pace that you need to run, shut your brain off and conserve all of that for the later miles, you're going to set yourself up for success. Again, like there is a lot of temptation to run some quick early miles because you're feeling good and the course is giving it to you, but you really just kind of have to stay within, a reasonable range for yourself, whatever that may be. I mean, there's parts of this race that are going to feel very, very easy. There's other times that's going to feel like pretty hard, but I think if you can keep things consistent, keep your head in it, that's all going to level out and you're going to be totally fine. I mean, but you really just have to trust yourself early on when it does feel easy. There's, you know, you don't bank time in a marathon, especially at CIM. It just doesn't work out that way. If you fall off, usually you tend to fall off pretty hard, and we want to avoid that as much as possible. Um, I have some notes that I'm going to send out afterward, just kind of on course strategy. Like I said, the first 4 to 7 miles can be very, very fast, easy to get carried away. You got to stay in control. Miles 7 through 15, they roll pretty gently. If there's anywhere to lock into a rhythm on the course, like it's right there. Um, there are a couple little like, steeper ups and downs, but nothing to really worry about. Miles 15 to 20, I think is the trickiest part of the course. The only goal there is to kind of maintain effort and not get greedy. There are a couple good descents there, and you might want to send it because you are in the second half at that point, but you still got a long way to go. So I think you just again like have to really stay within yourself and keep things in check because you want to get to 20 in good shape, 20, 21 miles in good shape. Because again, the last like 5 miles of this course are dead flat, which is great. But if you don't have the legs when you get to that point, you're not going to be able to take advantage of it too. So it's, you really got to think of this race in two halves. It's kind of the first 20 to 21 miles and then the last like 5 to 6. And you really want to treat that first 20, 21 miles as, a long run, and you're not just jogging along, but you're also not expending any unnecessary energy, physically or mentally, and really getting ready for the race to start at about 20, 21 miles. So it's like 20, 21 mile long run, 5, 6 mile race. That's the way that, that I look at it. In this race too, like the game I like to play over the last like 10K is you come into Sacramento and you can kind of count down the city blocks. I think you start at like 90 something, and then you get down to 6, which can feel like a long way. But I like playing that game just kind of like one at a time. And I really try to focus in between those blocks, not necessarily on my pace, but I think about how am I moving? Like, am I keeping my cadence up? Am I running pretty smoothly? Am I staying nice and tall? Am I avoiding getting sloppy? Thinking about those things rather than, oh my God, am I 5 seconds fast? Oh my God, am I 3 seconds slow? Because that is a way to drive yourself insane, I think, over the last like 5 to 6 miles. Just like, one block at a time. Like I'm gonna run really smooth from this block to the next block. Okay, I'm gonna maintain it for one more. It's just like playing those games over the last 5 to 6 miles, I find to be like a pretty good strategy. I mean, this race, I can speak for myself in this, people that I've coached and others that I've watched. If you do it right, you can run a very even race, like your first half and second half, like within, a minute of each other either way. Even if you're a slight positive split, like that's really good in the marathon, but you could definitely run it even. You can definitely run it negative, if you do it right. Again, just takes a lot of discipline, and you got to be ready to really race that last 10K. And I can send, in this sheet that I'll send out, like, I have my Strava profile in there. I have my official splits, and you can see like, I mean, I ran the first half in 1:13:40. I ran the second half in 1:13:53. So I ran like very, very even. I felt great the entire time. I fueled well, and I remember like really kind of biting my bottom lip in that first, 5 to 7 miles because I really wanted to go, but I had to hold myself back. And I'm glad that I did because over the last 5 miles, it was so fun. So it's just passing people left and right. Because as in any marathon, especially this one, people will crash and burn. And you want to be the hunter at the end of the race and not the hunted. And that just requires, again, like a lot of early patience, discipline, making good decisions, staying on top of your fueling, and not getting greedy. So, I mean, that's just kind of my quick overview of the course. Other things just to kind of keep in mind. It is a 7 a.m. start. The buses leave pretty early. You want to make sure that you are at the buses on time because it is about a 45-ish, to an hour drive out to Folsom. They do let you stay on the buses as long as possible. It's not going to rain. Doesn't look like it's going to rain this Sunday, but even if you just want to stay warm, you can stay in the bus for as late as you need to. But I would also like think about 7 a.m. start time, working backward. Like, when do you want to use the bathroom? When do you want to get a little bit of a warm up in? How soon do you want to be in your corral? Just making sure that you're not feeling super pressed, like once you get out to that start line. Even if you do stay on the bus, I always tell people make sure you have a set of dry clothes, warm clothes that you can throw away at the start. Keep yourself warm. I usually have like layers that I'll keep on while I'm just sitting around, then I'll peel a layer off while I'm warming up, and then I'll leave that last layer on till I'm literally in the corral, and I'll throw it off with like a minute or two to go. Just because you don't want to waste any excess energy early on, just like shivering while you're not even running yet. So I think that's important. Thinking about timing your breakfast, whether you eat before you get on the bus, whether you take it with you, like making sure that you just give yourself enough time to digest whatever it is you're going to eat that morning. Um, and then just, kind of going back to the night before, in order to assist that process on race morning, I think just making sure like before you go to bed on Saturday night, you've got your kit, you've got everything laid out, you've got your breakfast ready. I mean, basically all you need to do is kind of get dressed, use the bathroom and not be like fiddling around, causing yourself any unnecessary stress before you head to the buses. So that's my quick overview. I'm sure there are specific questions out there. I'm open and here to answer anything that might be on your mind about course strategy, pacing, gear, nutrition, any of it. So feel free to fire away.
Thanks, Mario. I have a question. From the bus drop off to
Mhm.
the start line, how far is that walk?
Not very far. Under half a mile from what I remember. It's not far.
And you mentioned, you keeping the warm clothes on until minutes before the race starts.
Mhm.
You just taking off your sweater and like throwing it, I don't know, over the barrier, or what do you do when you're in the middle of? I saw a photo of CIM. It looks like a stampede.
Yeah, it is a little bit of a stampede. I mean, you'll see a lot of people like, they'll give you basically like a 5 minute countdown, a minute countdown, 30 seconds, 10 seconds, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, all the way to the gun. And I mean, I basically just wait till like they say 1 minute to go, and I'll pull my last layer off and I'll just toss it, off and over to the side. Oftentimes they'll even have someone volunteer with trash bags collecting that sort of stuff, because that you won't be the only person who's shedding clothes there right at the start line. I think you'll see a lot of people kind of throwing stuff off at that point. But I would just try to keep that last layer on, especially on a cold morning, because we're looking at like low 40s, just as long as possible. And I even know some people who, you've got to show your bib to get into the corral, but they may even wear a long sleeve over whatever singlet they're going to race in for the first mile or two, and then take it off during the race and toss it aside at an aid station. So whatever's going to work best for you in that regard.
Okay.
Yeah, there is we have blue bins, and you can lay things along the fence. It would sound.
For some of the smaller races, you can kind of just like slide into the corral like 5 minutes beforehand. I guess for those who've never done like a big marathon like this, are you expected to go into your corral 15, 20 minutes before? And if so, what do you do if you need to pee? Do you ever just like stand around and go in like 5 minutes before?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't looked at the website at CIM to see if they have specific instructions on that. From what I remember, they want people in about 15 minutes before, because they do have, it's not like wave starts like a big race like Boston, but they do have, elites, sub elites, and then they kind of split people off based on their expected finish time. And they will like check some of those bibs. And I think you're going to need at least like 15 minutes to get in. It's probably like 15 to 20 minutes of being in the corral. I don't think it's any longer than that. For a race of this size versus like Boston, where you're kind of in there for like 20, 25 minutes. Which can be a bit of a hassle. And they do have porta potties, outside. I mean, you're going to see people peeing in the corral. That's going to happen. Some folks will take in like a Gatorade bottle, not to get disgusting. It's just what happens, in case they need to go kind of at the last second. But, I would try to get in there with plenty of time so that you don't feel rushed, but also, give yourself enough time to use the restroom. I'm going to try to look up right now, like what it says on their website, but It's usually about 15 minutes before that you're going to want to be in there.
Okay, super.
Good for the guys. It's a small ravine. Yeah, you can sort of climb down and then get out.
Okay, so Steven, it says so it has entrance closing time, right? So the race starts at 7 a.m. Is when it goes off, and that's the elite AWD corral, seated corral, and then they have self-seated based on expected finish time. So you seed yourself. So they have, the sub 250 staging area, which all of this will be clearly marked. 250 to 305, 305 to 310, 316 to 340. And it says like those, basically all of those entrances close. So like the absolute latest you can get in there is like basically 650 for the front corrals, 655 for the middle corrals, and then 7 a.m. for the rear corrals, which they will start at like 7:10, a little bit later. So based on your projected finishing time, if you just look on the website kind of under participant info, and then you go down to start line, it'll have all of that info in there. So, I mean, that's the latest that you can get in there, is going to be basically 10 minutes before your anticipated start.
Got it. Okay.
And they do have a lot of, it's a whole big row of porta potties. I remember it being pretty generous, and not having to wait in line too long to use a restroom. So, hopefully that's not an issue for anyone.
No, nobody else has questions. All right, then I'm gonna keep firing.
Keep firing. Go for it.
Are you ever worried that you're in such a tight crowd that somebody's gonna just like step on your Achilles, or like, is there anything like that that you need to watch out for?
I don't worry about that stuff, but I do watch out for it. I mean, I really just try to have, much like at the track, good spatial awareness of what's happening around me. I find usually when that sort of stuff becomes an issue, it's when you're frazzled and trying to kind of bob and weave and find some running room. I think, with the start, it's like no matter what corral you're in, it's going to be kind of crowded right there at the start line, and those first few steps are going to be pretty slow. It's a long race. It's going to be fine. It's going to open up within quarter to a half a mile, and you'll be able to find your stride. So I really think like where you have to be the most careful is kind of in that first like quarter to half a mile, and just making sure that you're not bobbing and weaving, you're staying upright. And usually by that point, like the road is wide enough and things spread out enough that you can find, kind of find a lane to run in. And then as you're moving along, especially like those early aid stations and such, really just trying to kind of look ahead so that you can anticipate if you're going to go over that, you make sure you've got a clear line, like taking quick looks over your shoulder to make sure no one's kind of barrel you from behind. Like if you're going to the right and you see someone charging up on the right, maybe just let them pass before you move over yourself, like that type of thing. So I think it's just generally holding your line and just having good awareness of what's happening on any side of you.
Okay.
Could you talk a little bit more about sort of your aid station strategy there to sort of minimize the amount of time you might like get caught up with people, and maybe
Yep.
specific to CIM in terms of how their aid stations are set up?
Yep. So my number one hack is to avoid the first like aid station or two. And the way that I do that is by starting the race with my own bottle, so that I don't need to take any water from those early aid stations. You can just kind of avoid all of that madness, because those early ones are always the most crowded just because of the sheer number of people around you. So I always start with my own bottle so that I'm self-sufficient and I don't have to worry about fighting the crowds at those early aid stations. As the race goes along, I think it's knowing where they are. I mean, CIM at last look has 17 aid stations along the course. I'm just going to double check and make sure that that hasn't changed, but I think that's correct. Yeah, 17 aid stations throughout the course. The first one's at mile 2.2, 4.2, 6.4, and then basically like every mile or two after that. So when I'm going into the aid stations, I mean, what I'm doing again is like just number one, knowing that it's usually on the right side of the road. Sometimes it's on the left. Let me see what it says here. Doesn't even say what side of the road it is, but I mean, you're able to see like where the aid stations are. So I'm always, I generally know when they're coming up. You can see them. Again, if I know I'm going to be going over to get something at the aid station, I'm just checking over my shoulder to make sure, like, okay, no one's coming up quick behind me. I look in front of me. I make sure that I've got a clear line, that I'm going right over to the aid station. Then I always try to make eye contact with one of the volunteers, and establish that connection, because then they know that you're coming for them and what they have, and they're looking for you, and it's usually a smoother handoff that way. Most of the volunteers are pretty good. They're going to hold, like, if you're grabbing a cup, they're going to hold that cup from the top and you can kind of grab it from the bottom. And I always just try to like slow down enough so that I can get the cup without spilling too much water out of it. I usually like pinch the top right away to kind of hold as much water in there as I can. And don't rush. I think that's the number one thing, is people just rush through aid stations, whether it's like, getting to the person and grabbing the cup itself, grabbing the cup, drinking from the cup. Like, you can run with it for, as long as you want to, a couple 100 yards. Like, make sure you get all that fluid down, especially because there's not a lot in there. So it's like, you're only going to really have a chance to like grab one cup at an aid station. So you want to make sure that you don't waste any of that, especially if you really, really need it. The other thing you could do too, which works, and it costs you like a little bit more time, but I think it ultimately saves you in the end, is I do know people who run with a bottle the entire way, or they'll have a soft flask like in their shorts that they'll pull out. And usually when you get to an aid station, there's someone there with a carafe of water, because they're always refilling those cups, and you just hold it out, let them pour some water in, throw your cap on and go. It takes like 5 seconds, right? I think the biggest mistake a lot of people make at aid stations is just rushing through. So no matter what like your strategy is, whether you're going to rely on them or you're carrying your own bottle, I think just don't rush through the aid stations. Like, just get what you need, and that's gonna save you a lot of time at the end, if you had missed like one of those fueling stops.
So what about nutrition? So, like, should I be relying on the nutrition that's provided by the aid station, or should I just bring all the nutrition?
I always advise people to be self-sufficient. I think you want to use what you know is going to work for you, and you want to make sure that you have it. So I'm always a proponent of carrying whatever it is that you anticipate using. I mean, you can see very clearly like where the nutrition is going to be on the course, and if you remember that. I mean, oftentimes, like for me, like I just, they have gels, like for instance, like they only have gels at three of the 17 aid stations. And it's like the third aid station, the seventh aid station, and the 13th. I can guarantee you by the seventh aid station, I'm not going to remember that I've seen 6 aid stations before me. And I'm going to forget to take a gel. So I want to make sure I know if I need one at that point, which is about halfway, that I have it. And I don't have to think about it because I have it. I don't have to think about where it's coming from because I have it on my own. So I always think like have your own. And then if you end up in a pinch where, you lose a gel, you need an extra one, whatever it happens to be, you can take advantage of that on the course. But it's easy enough to kind of carry everything that you might need for the race, and I always advise people to do that, so you know what you have. Ideally, you've used it in training, so you know that it works and it sits well in your stomach, and you're just not playing a guessing game when you're out there in the middle of the course.
For first timers, are there certain, I guess, things that commonly go sideways? And, what do you recommend in terms of preventing those, besides maybe going out too hard and those type of things?
Well, I wouldn't say besides, because that's probably the number one thing. So if I could drill anything into your head, it would be to just like not go out too hard. Better to go out, slow, and realize like the second half of the course, you've got more gas in the tank and you can pick it up, than to really drain that tank too early and not be able to do anything about it toward the end. So don't discount that. I think that's the most important thing. Number two is just rushing, again, like through the aid stations, rushing around, race morning. I think it's important, like before and during the race, to just try and keep yourself as calm and emotionally stable as possible. Oftentimes we let our emotions get the best of us, and that can be for better or worse. That can be excitement that caused us to go out too fast, or that can be beating ourselves up during the race because we had too fast of a mile, or we dropped a cup of water, or we missed a gel or something like that. And I think it's just, it's really not allowing yourself to get too high or too low at any point, like before and during the race, and that can really be a lot of people's undoing. So I think it's just trying to stay as like calm and stable as possible, at all times. So that allows you to make good decisions. It allows you to kind of get through the day as unscathed as possible. Let's see. I'd say the other thing is to, and at this point, like, it's kind of too late but not too late, but like go in with a fueling plan again, like not to be like winging it and eating when you're hungry. Some people get away with that, and they're fine, and you're like, oh, that's cool, I wish I could do that. For most people, it's like you got to have a plan in place, and you got to try to stick to it, as well as you can throughout the day. For me, I try to keep it super simple. I always have a gel, usually like, or equivalent. Sometimes it's a chew, but like, 30 grams of carbs, roughly 15 minutes before the start. And then once the race starts, for me, it's like I'm taking a gel like every like 25 to 30 minutes during the race. Like that's my plan. I keep it super simple and predictable in that way. And that's what I've done in training. And, I don't have to think twice about it. I just know, 25, 50, 75, like as I go. For me, like, so I go about every 25 minutes, or at least I try to. Like, it's kind of automatic. Whereas I think a lot of first timers either forget to fuel if they don't have a plan. Um, Going in, they have an oh shit moment at 15, where they're like, I've only had one gel or no gels, or nothing, and then they overcorrect and they have stomach issues, that type of thing. So I think it's just having a plan, going in, sticking to it as best you can. And the same thing goes with pacing. Kind of know roughly that range that you want to be in. And I think especially on a course like this, like, you should never be that far outside of it, 5-10 seconds a mile, depending where you are on the course. So.
Speaking of nutrition, I asked this in our Slack group, and I think what you mentioned just now makes a lot of sense. A gel every 20 to 30 minutes or so.
Mhm.
Do you just rely on the little cups for electrolytes, or do you purposely also do some sort of salt stick, which other people have mentioned?
Yeah, it's very individual. I would say it's helpful to know how salty of a sweater you are going into the race. In terms of like hierarchy of nutritional needs, number one, it's going to be um, carbohydrate and getting an adequate amount in during the race because you're burning hot. Two, on it, especially on a day like this where it's not going to be that hot, it's just going to be like fluid intake, like not even like electrolytes is third basically on that hierarchy of needs. It's like making sure that you're getting in enough fluids for as much sweat as you're losing during the race. And then number three for most people is going to be um, electrolytes, which for some might not even be much of a concern. And for some, it's going to be a major concern, and that may slot into number two. So I'd say if you're a real salty sweater, you want to make sure before you even step to the start line, I think that you've done a good job of like preloading that morning. So meaning like you've had an electrolyte drink with your breakfast, or you've been sipping on it prior to the start. Again, this is another reason why I'm a big fan of starting with a bottle, because you can decide what goes into that. So you know, if you really need to make sure that you're on top of your electrolytes and you want to get off to a good start with an electrolyte solution in your bottle so that you know that you're going to be able to get that down over the first few miles of the race, because it gets harder the deeper you get into the race for a number of reasons. One, just stomach sensitivity. It can just be harder to get anything down that's not water, and even water can be tough. Two, like the delivery mechanism of trying to get in sodium during the race is tricky because a lot of gels don't have a ton of sodium. So you either need to, carry it yourself, like in a bottle, again, being just like self-sufficient in that way, or you're carrying something like a salt stick, or salt pills. And like, I don't know about you, but I find that stuff to be really, really hard to get down when I'm running hard. So, I think it's just, if you really need to replace like a lot of salt and electrolytes during a run because you are a super salty sweater, that you've ideally like practiced doing that and have a plan going in. If you're a mild to moderate sweater and you do a good job preloading and like you start with a bottle, or you're getting down gels regularly which have like a little bit of sodium in them, you're probably going to be okay throughout most of the race. Like, but if you know that you're a super salty sweater, again, like I would preload, I would start with a bottle, and I would have like a plan for how you're going to get more electrolytes in you later in the race.
Do you ever concentrate your bottle? Where let's say you dump in 2 bags of 320s from Morton and in 500 mils, where normally it's like 1 packet, and you put some salt in there, and it becomes this kind of more thicker but still drinkable fluid. Is that something that you ever do?
I've never done that.
You just do 1 packet of Morton and maybe like 1 tab of some sort of electrolyte?
Yeah, I use Precision Fuel, which is what's going to be on course at CIM. If you use Morton, I mean that's fine, it's a great product. But unless you've done it in training and that one, that your stomach can process that, and two, that you can tolerate the sweetness of the taste, because it is going to make that solution a lot sweeter, which may not be super palatable during the race. I would just stick to the recommended dosage.
Okay. At which point would you say the last bit of either gel or nutrition no longer matters? Is that like with like half an hour left? When do you not bother taking any more? Because with practice, we've never gone the full distance. I've never
Yeah.
now went to do my last gel.
Yeah, usually if you can do a pretty good job up until the last like 20 to 40 minutes, like you're generally going to be okay. Um, so yeah, I think it's just that, if you have a hard time getting it down just because your stomach's had enough at that point, or you're just pushing so hard that, you can't get it down, like, and you're in the last 20 to 40 minutes and you've done a good job before that, you're probably going to be fine. Yeah.
Mm. Looking at the course map, for some reason, they have the Fair Oak Hills highlighted. Is there something weird about that segment? That's like miles 6 to 11 on the course.
Which map are you looking at?
Uh, it's under like the course information. It's just like it's like highlighted in yellow. I wasn't sure if there was something specific about this segment.
Oh, on the elevation profile?
Yeah,
I sort of see that. Sorry, I'm colorblind, so I'm kind of useless on this kind of stuff. But I think I see what you're talking about. Um, I I don't know. I have no idea why they have that highlighted. I don't remember anything notable necessarily about that section.
got it.
So for the first part, do we keep the same speed or should we slow down? Like, what's the strategy for the upper system?
Strategy for which part? Sorry, it's a little
Oh,
muffled.
yeah, the strategy for going uphill. So should we like, should I slow down or should I try to keep the same speed?
In the first part, or sorry, which part? That's the part I can't hear.
Oh, like on the hill, going. Yeah.
On the hills, like I said, I think you want to have like, if you have your goal pace and in a 5 to 10 second range on either side of that, usually on the more uphill miles, you're probably going to be 5 to 10 seconds slower than goal pace. But again, like you're going to get that back and then some, so you'll make it up on the descent. So I would expect your pace at the same effort to slow down, about 10 seconds a mile or so on average.
Cool. Any other questions, folks? If not, we can continue using the CIM channel to just kind of coordinate any last minute details and shenanigans. I'll
Yep.
see you guys on Wednesday, and then I'll also see you guys on Sunday.
I will not see you guys on
One
Wednesday.
more question for you.
I will see you on Sunday. I'll be out at around the 6 mile mark, 10K, somewhere in that ballpark, and then try to get to mile 20. So you can look for me there on the right side of the road. And then Fuentes, I sent you kind of my CIM notes via Slack, like in a direct message. So if you want to put that, it's just a PDF. You can put it in the channel for the group, or share it with everyone somehow. Hopefully you find some useful stuff on there.
Yep, thank you. We got it. And Mario, thanks again for taking the time to chat with us. Really appreciate it. And essentially, I just wanted to bring the awesome
Yeah.
vibe and fun that we had last year and get this crew going.
Yeah. Were there any more questions? I thought something may have come up, but I
Yeah,
couldn't.
sorry, Mario. One more question. I'm watching the video. It looks to me like a very high number of people have gloves on. Is that
Mhm.
something purely and I like never run at like 6:30 in the morning. Is it just like freezing there? Like
Yeah, it'll be cold and dry. I mean, it's a 7 a.m. start. From what I'm seeing, so it looks pretty consistent this week. It's probably going to be around like 40 or so at the start, which is pretty cold. It's cold and dry. It's not supposed to be windy or anything, but like that's pretty chilly. When I ran in 2018, it was very similar conditions. I wore light gloves the entire way, and I was prepared to throw them off if I needed to, but I never did. But I would bring gloves, not any expensive ones that you'd be sad to part with, but I think just having like an inexpensive pair of, gloves that are enough to kind of keep the chill off your hands, keep your hands warm, that you could keep on the entire time, tuck into your shorts or even throw off if necessary, is a good idea.
okay, got it. All right.
Yeah, it'll feel chilly, especially compared to some of the temps that many of you experience in the city. It'll be a bit colder than that.
Okay, I see.
Anyone else? Anything else? Yes, no, maybe so.
Thanks, Mario.
Thanks so much, Mario. Thanks for all the
Thank you,
tips.
sir.
Cool. You're all welcome. I'll see you out there on Sunday.
Thank
Cool.
you, Mario.
Thank you very much.
Thanks,
Have a good
Mario.
one.
All right.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.